You know, because these conversations remind me of when we go for a walk, especially during the pandemic, when you're like being invaded by zombies and all that shit. And the world is in lockdown. There's hardly any cars on the street. And that sort of thing. And those conversations are always enjoyable. So,
yeah, speaking of lockdowns and zombies and all that, I used to have this reoccurring kind of fantasy that it'd be kind of cool being the last man on Earth.
Right.
Like, because I could take all sorts of stuff from stores and drive around like a maniac and just burn things down just for fun. And I thought that'd be awesome just to do that. But after the lockdown, even though the lockdown wasn't really, I mean, I saw people, but there was a bit of what do you call it? A bit of there was an isolation factor where, okay, right. I can't go to the library, I can't go to a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I thought, oh my God, I think the whole Last Man on Earth scenario would be not good. It might be fun for a week, but it always brings me to, have you ever seen a movie called The Quiet Earth?
Nope.
It's a New Zealand film made in 1985. It's about this scientist who wakes up and there's nobody left on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And after about a month, he slowly goes insane. And by this time, for some reason, the electricity's running. I don't know how, but
they don't address that in the story, do they?
Yeah. Well, he was an engineer, so maybe he figured it out. But
you've seen I Am Legend, right, with Will Smith?
Yeah.
Well, he had generators. They showed that.
Yeah, but in Quiet Earth, this guy wakes up, and after about a month, he slowly, like, there's a scene where he's got all these cutout cardboard statues of different people in front of the balcony in the courtyard, and he's kind of got a robe, and he's addressing the statues as his subjects.
Yeah.
And before he totally loses it, he runs into a woman.
Yeah.
And then they run into this guy. He's a Maori indigenous guy.
Right.
So these are the three last people.
Okay.
And the common factor is there's an event that happened on the planet which wiped out everybody.
Right.
Actually, it doesn't wipe them out. It just sends them into a different dimension. Okay. And so the dimension they're in is there's no people on Earth except those three.
Right. And it turns out everybody's still there?
All three of them died at a certain time.
No, but the other people in the world were still there, but they were off into another dimension.
They're another copy of the Earth, I guess. You know.
Okay. That's kind of bizarre, but
yeah. So what happened was the scientist actually tried to kill himself because I won't go into detail, but he did something with the scientific community which caused this event to happen to the world.
It's very similar to I Am Legend, by the way.
Yeah,
and he was a scientist as well.
And I think the girl was electrocuted. And the other guy was murdered.
Okay.
He was drowned by this guy's husband who, you know. So anyways, it's a good movie.
I'll check it out. Yeah. It's funny how in these kinds of stories, you know, and you just sort of said it, that you'd think it would be really cool until you actually went and you found yourself in a situation, which I did too, and everyone else obviously in the world for the most part.
Yeah.
Unless you had a job that was still essential and you were going to work every day. But the isolation is a real factor. And I didn't like it at all. And I sort of took solace in the fact that other people that I eventually started talking to were complaining of the same stuff. People who were like me and like you know, couldn't go out, couldn't go to the library, couldn't go to meetings of any sort, and no socializing hardly, except for maybe going for a walk, which was kind of like, even that was kind of freaky. But being so restricted takes a toll, man. It takes an emotional toll. And I took solace in the fact that, crap, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, me too. And I felt like I was in
otherwise I'm a freak.
I felt like I was in a sci-fi movie about a virus.
God, it was weird.
Actually, the first week I went out and, this is just before the lockdown, and there's all this coronavirus stuff in the media. I bought the movie, the DVD Contagion.
Oh, okay. I watched it on Netflix.
Yeah. Contagion, the virus in the movie is 10 times worse than this one.
Yeah. I didn't like that movie as much as, say, I Am Legend.
Yeah.
Or everybody loves post-apocalyptic movies, that theme. You know, like The Road and Mad Max. And, all these movies, they resonate with everybody until we're in one, and then it's a different game.
I think it's kind of like the freedom thing, because I used to think, I remember a couple of years ago, I came across some financial trouble where I lost a whole pile of money in a con job. Somebody conned me out of some money. I was unemployed. I was facing bankruptcy. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if there's like big apocalypse where all the banking structure falls apart and the debt is cleared, and in the future the only currency is ammunition and food? Like that would solve my problem.
Yeah.
But not really. It would just create a whole bunch of other problems, you know?
Yeah, it would. Well, and that's an interesting topic. When you talk about 3 people being left on the planet, same scenario, I think, you know, and the next best real life scenario that I like to think about or use as an example is Pitcairn.
Pitcairn's Island, yes.
Yeah, the Bounty, when, you know, they sent the captain and the key players off onto a rowboat and they escaped. I don't think they ever got caught, but they settled in Pitcairn, and there are still descendants of that crew. The Mutiny. Was that the name of the ship or the name of the movie?
The Bounty was the name of the
Bounty. It was a mutiny. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay, there's 3 movies. One was the original Mutiny, and the Bounty, I think, was made in 1930s.
Yeah, way back.
Then the other one was with Marlon Brando, was made in the early 60s. Yeah. And then the Bounty had Mel Gibson and
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, and I thought Mel Gibson's performance was awesome. Like, he just totally starts losing it during the mutiny.
Yeah, yeah, it was good.
Actual, in real life, they were young men. Like Fletcher Christian was 22, and
really?
And Lieutenant Bly was 32,
and
they used to be really good friends.
Yeah,
and
until
yes, they got to Tahiti, and the sailors kind of got too comfortable there.
Those Polynesian babes got in the way.
Yes. But Pitcairn Island, there's a big sex scandal there in the
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
How society seems to devolve into very primitive, violent, or debauchery. if left to our own. Like, so if there was a small group of people left on the planet, I don't think it would fare well.
No, unless you got some good, strong leaders who are spiritually moral, or, you know, have some...
I'm going to say spiritually convincing. You got to convince everybody to toe the line.
Yeah.
Because I think he's starting to go a little crazy after a while. But the idea is kind of interesting. If you're the only person on Earth, what would you do? I mean, my 14-year-old brain would go in one direction.
Yeah.
My 61-year-old brain would be like, especially knowing what I know now, would be like, no, I'm going to go crazy if that happens.
One thing I would do, and I'm not going to name the place because of lawsuits, but I was, let's just say I used to work at a place that no longer wanted me there.
Okay.
I would go and set the place on fire. Even though there's nobody there, I would set it on fire and just watch it burn.
You're so vindictive.
I know.
All right, if you could burn it now, knowing you'd get away with it, knowing there'd be nobody hurt, but just for the pleasure, would you do it? Probably not.
No, because all the original people there are not there, and the original boss is no longer there. And so it would just be hurting the wrong people. If I want revenge, I want the right people to feel my wrath, you know.
As long as they don't die.
No.
Because you're not that mean.
No, I'm not that mean. No.
So anyways, you know we're recording now, right?
Yes.
All right, good. I don't know if it showed up at your end. Let's. I want to bring up this topic because we talked about we were walking and we get some weird topics. I want to ask you about if you remember when we got onto the topic of perverts.
Oh yes.
I thought that was interesting. And while we just started rambling about it and perversion and the description thereof and
sex deviancy
and what have you, and you know, there's a lot of layers to that, but I thought it was an interesting topic. Now I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but I do know we talked about it. And I know I was thinking, geez, did I not read a book? And after we talked that day, I went on Amazon and searched Perverts, the book, and I found it. I did read this book. Yeah, it's called Perv, actually. And I'm just going to read it first. By Jesse Bering. The Sexual Deviant in All of Us is the subtitle. I remember reading that, I don't know how many years ago, possibly 8 to 10 years ago. I like books on every subject, so it's not like I'm obsessed with this theme. I'm not. I just, anything to do with human nature, anything to do with society, evolution, science, sociology, yada, yada, yada. So I read it for that reason. It's sort of like I put this in the category of the book, Sapiens or Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Freakonomics, those kinds of books. So, but I can say this much about this book. I didn't find it that interesting.
Okay.
That's all I got to say about that. So, and on the topic of that topic, there was a documentary, I believe, on Netflix called All Men Are Pedophiles, which was it sounds like pretty raunchy, but it's not. It's probably a bad title considering the topic. The topic it's more scientifically based, and they just talk about sexuality and the fact that when women stop growing, developing their average 16 years of age, and men stop growing at the age of 18. So when a woman is 16, for 2 more years, a man still develops. And there's evolutionary reasons why that is. And the reason is called natural selection, right? Women choose men and have over millions of years, men who are stronger, taller, for survival. And so natural selection said, okay, men, boys, males, you need to be big and strong and in order to survive, because she's going to choose you over the little short guy, weakling over there with one arm. So it's kind of like got to do with that, which I found kind of interesting. But, if you're at your peak and you're an 18-year-old boy and you're going out with a 16-year-old girl, you're technically a pedophile. You could get charged. You could get charged and arrested and go on the sexual offenders list.
That's in Canada or in...
Anywhere these laws, I believe it's in Canada and the States.
Okay.
Probably in the free world, but by virtue of the way the law is set up, under the age of 18, you're a minor. So if you're 18 years old, you're an adult. And an 18-year-old going out with a 16-year-old girl is pretty typical. So if they're making out and there's a little bit like crossing the line, a little bit of nudity involved, that's like rape, technically. Yeah. It's sketchy stuff. But anyways, I don't want to get too much into that topic. I just want to sort of point that out, that it's interesting that the biology plays a large part. So an older guy would be attracted to that age group. And I know that is something that's been written about with the scientists as well. Why are older men so attracted to younger women? And probably that's why, biology. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not making a judgment call on either side of the issue. I'm just pointing it out, biologically speaking, it sort of explains things. So,
well, I think from what I've read in several books, I'm not going to name the books because they kind of all blended in together in my head, but a lot of it has to do with fertility.
Yes.
Young women are fertile.
Yes.
So on a biological or evolutionary, men are looking for breeders.
She's at her peak.
She's at her sexual peak.
16.
Fertility.
She's ready to start making babies.
And it's a subconscious, I guess it just, now in today's civilization, you don't act on that.
No.
No.
Well, actually, we've already crossed the line, and we're both going to hell. We're both going to jail, and we're both going to Twitter dungeon for talking this way.
Yeah, but back in the old days, the lifespan was a lot shorter. So like,
yeah,
like I don't know when the lifespan got above 50. I'm assuming a couple of 100 years ago. I could be wrong, but in the medieval days, or even the Roman times, like I don't think anybody grew older than 50, maybe 40 or 50
on average. Yeah, but if you were an Egyptian, there was a lot of food to eat and water, and life was pretty good. So they probably lived longer. I'm going to imagine it was tougher depending on the geography. You ever heard? I remember reading this book called Lessons in History, which, by the way, everybody should read. It's such an amazing book by Will Durant. He's one of the most renowned historians on this planet. Will and Ariel Durant, they wrote volumes and volumes of books, historical books. And one book he wrote was called Lessons in History. And it was recommended by Jim Rohn. You know, Jim Rohn, the public speaker, motivational speaker, blah, blah, blah. He mentioned it in one of his talks, and I wrote it down and I read it. And he was right. He said everybody should read this book. And I agree. It's a good read. It's sort of like 100 pages long. It's very short, but it's sort of like a summary. But one of the lines in the first chapter of the book was, geography is the matrix of history. That always stuck with me. Geography is the matrix of history. So the actual lay of the land, the weather, the rivers, the lakes, everything that has to do and that defines the geography of a particular area defines in large part what goes on historically. And it's pretty much a given that that's true. And you look at the Egyptians, they were very prosperous because they had the Nile. They had a desert on either side, surrounded by ocean, and they were protected. So they were protected from invaders. They were able to grow a lot of plants, and until the Romans learned to build bigger boats and sail across the Mediterranean, and then they invaded. So anyways, I feel like I'm getting way off topic here.
Yeah, we were talking about perverts and
stay focused, Rob.
What's happening with the fall of Rome and today?
Yeah,
I don't know if I should lump this into perversion, but
go for it.
Okay, polyamory.
What is that?
Polyamory is open relationships,
right?
Where, there's a couple, either they're married or they're in long-term relationships, and they decide to have intimate relationships with other people. Now, there's different versions. It could be one couple is having an intimate relationship with another couple, or it could be like a triad where the guy's got his wife and another woman in there, or it could be a woman has two guys. She's got her husband, then she's got another guy. So that's happening more and more from what I've heard, polyamory. And Rollo Tomasi and a couple of those red pill guys,
right?
Look it up. Anybody out there who doesn't know about that, their take is, I don't want to quote them, but I'm not quoting them, just giving the gist of what they say, is that when a woman decides to, or you could apply this to a man as well, like if you're married to a woman and she wants to open up the relationship, that relationship's over. She's lost total respect for you. That's it. It's done. And I think the same thing is with a woman too, you know? So I think they're also saying that polyamory is the new beta strategy.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that.
Yeah, like what's happening now is, from what I've read and heard, less men, especially millennials, are actually having sex than our Generation X or the baby boomers. They are.
It's true. I was just listening to George Bruno. I don't know if you follow him.
I know George Bruno. Yeah.
The Daybreak Show. I listen to him every day.
Yeah.
And he just mentioned that on today's episode. And,
see, what's happening is with the Instagram and Tinder, and like people aren't dating or meeting the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
It's like 20% of the top alpha males, or just 20% of the males, are chosen over the rest of 80% of the rest of the schlubs, or us, you know. And so the women are going after the top ranking guys. So
okay, let me talk on that and ask you a question on that specific topic, just so you can kind of open that up a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the 20%, which I don't disagree with, I 100% agree with for the most part. But of that 20%, are those guys largely players and or taking advantage of the situation, which they very well can? If you're in your 20s and you're a good-looking guy, you got a good job, you could be getting laid left, right, and center given that scenario. A lot of women are on that bandwagon because of whatever empowerment or whatever sort of delusion they've got themselves sold on, and they're having a great time getting laid by these guys, which eventually results in a whole different situation with limitations, you know, the wall. But we can talk about that in a minute. But but just to kind of talk about that 20%, it's interesting. It looks like they're players largely, and they're not, maybe they're alpha males, but they're, I mean, is there any real legitimacy to it? Because where are they going with this? Are they going to pick the best suited mate and then settle down and start a family?
Or who's going with it? The women or the guys?
The 20%.
I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are quite a few players. Probably at least half of them are players.
I would say higher than half, but whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of them are probably of the mindset, and I've had this mindset myself where, well, you know, deep down, I want to find the one. I want a woman as a wife or a long-term partner. However, I'm not going to turn up a piece if it shows up and presents itself to me, you know, along the way, you know. And I got into trouble with that once where I used to be on Plenty of Fish for a short while.
Right.
And they had like companions. They had long-term, casual, different categories, right? So I was on long-term and casual, you know.
Okay.
And this woman saw my ad and she emailed me saying, well, what is it that you want? I noticed that you're on both categories, casual and long-term. And I emailed back and I was honest. I says, well, you know, deep down, I want a long-term relationship. However, if a casual one comes up every so often, temporarily, I'll go with that. To, you know,
you explain that? That's what you told her?
Yeah, and she was all upset. I don't like that answer. Well, you asked, you know, like, I'm not going to hold out for the long term if, you know, like, I think about it differently now, but this was like over 20 years ago. But
was that long ago?
Yeah, it's about 20 years ago.
Has the internet been around that long? I guess it has.
Yeah. Well, early 2000s, maybe not quite 20, but
Plenty of Fish.
Yeah.
So they actually give that option, casual or...
They no longer have the casual anymore.
Okay.
Because there's too much, I think, I don't know so much with Plenty of Fish. I know they got rid of the casual section at Plenty of Fish. But they used to have back pages and what's another one? Craigslist.
Yes.
Like in the casual section, you would think, okay, these are just people waiting to be hook up. Half of them were hookers.
Okay.
They're looking for financial compensation. But
open for business.
They'd say like 100 roses will get you, like what? You know, like they would.
Yeah.
And they got rid of that section, which, you know, and I think a lot of those economics, people are selling themselves to make money, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, back to perverts.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I wish I could remember the actual conversation we had, but if you keep talking
well, what is perversion? I think it goes by like maybe 50 years ago. I could be wrong, but like the norm was regular missionary position sex for the use of procreation only. And anything other than that was perverted.
If she's on top, it's like hardcore.
Oh my God. Or God forbid if oral sex is involved, like woo, you know.
That's an untouchable. Don't even talk about that one.
And now it's like anal is the new oral, you know, like everywhere you go, like Pornhub or whatever. You know, every video has to have your obligatory anal, and it's just ridiculous, you know. I'm not judging it who's into that or not, but it's just like, and then you've got lots of this is disturbing, incest porn.
Really?
Yeah. Now there's all, but it's not. It's almost incest porn. It's kind of like stepmother and stepson.
Okay.
Father, like they don't quite go into mother son or father daughter. It's like stepmother and the son and I've watched a few of those, and they're kind of funny where it's like, oh, don't tell your father. He won't, you know, your father's an asshole, blah, blah, blah. So, you know.
But here we go.
Yeah. And it's just, I saw one which was really funny. It's this stepmother who, she had to be a stepmother because she was like maybe 5 years older than the stepson, you know. And, her and her stepson are going to a funeral. They're ready to go to a funeral, and he's got a headache. He's feeling not too good, and he doesn't want to go because he's got a headache.
And she knows the cure.
Oh, she thinks, I'm going to get you some Aleve. Now, Aleve is little blue pills, right? She mixes it up with her father's Viagra. So she gives him 2 Viagra pills.
Right.
And so the stepson thinks it's a leaf, and he takes two Viagras, and next thing he's got a raging boner. And he's like, "I can't, I won't go down, I won't go down." And of course, she accommodates him by, and then after the whole event is over, I won't go into detail, but lots of fun happened. It was like, "Don't tell your father," like.
These are actors, right?
Of course, these are actors. Yeah.
But it's a theme that you're talking about.
So that's happening. It's like that's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
And
you got to wonder though, in today's day and age, how people are getting desensitized, and eventually everything becomes boring. So they got to push the limits, and that could also explain this polyamory. Sorry, that's the French in me coming out there. Polyamory. There we go. I said it. Well, polyamory. I mean, I've noticed that there's a lot of, there seems to be a trend towards, the other word for it is swinging, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And which has always been a thing, and but it seems to be more of a thing, and whether or not it's right or wrong doesn't matter. It's whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. That's the way I look at it. And I think, well, this is my guess. I'm going to guess that people go down that road for the same reason that, let's say a young man who masturbates constantly to porn, he'll eventually get bored with that kind of porn and then go down a darker road, possibly leading into some really dark stuff, possibly illegal shit. You got to wonder about that, right? What leads some of these people down these dark roads, excluding the violence. I don't want to talk about the violent stuff. That's like really, really dark. And well, kiddie porn's in the same category, but excluding those, it seems to be a human condition where we get bored, desensitized. We have to go to a different, and I have thoughts on, just to be practical about this, on if you were in a situation like that, what would be the cure, so to speak, or what would you do? And but on the topic of polyamory, it seems kind of weird to me. I say this knowing that I'm perfectly capable of doing any of these things, other than the really bad ones. That just seems to be totally wrong, logistically, morally, ethically, and legally. But the idea that you can go down these roads, sexually speaking, and many of which would be perverted, whether or not they were by definition perverted 50 years ago, or by today's day and age, culturally speaking, a lot more is acceptable, right? So the obsession, I think, is what drives the desire. And why is it there in the first place, allowing you to place a certain level of priority on top of that? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? So you're just like, oh, this is important to me. I've been married X amount of years. I gotta see if my wife is interested in swinging or trying a polyamorous relationship. I mean, from what I know and people who I've seen, it seems to me they just get bored, and they want a new thrill, and they're bored, they're desensitized, they want a new thrill, and they go down that road. And it seems to be almost, in today's day and age, when you're talking about identity politics and everything like that, you can almost categorize them in the category of the protected ones. We are going to elevate them. We are going to sanction it and edify it as a legitimate activity, because they feel really deep down inside, I think they know it's somehow morally wrong or not the best way to live. Does any of what I'm saying make any amount of sense to you at all?
Most of it. There's a video, I forget what it's called, but there's a case in the US where 4 guys are in a relationship with this woman.
Right. I've seen that article. We're talking total betas, right?
Yes. And it turned out that later on, one of the fathers or stepfathers ended up hurting the baby. Like, he's in jail for assaulting the baby.
Why do you suppose he did that, or is there an explanation?
I think he said that was because the kid was crying or something, or he was just upset, and I'm thinking that's okay. Now, if you look at her, she's like, oh my God, like, oh, well, they were all hideous. I know I'm being judgmental, but what the hell? All of them were hideous, like
yeah.
Guys were like, they looked like a bunch of products of incest. And she was like, oh my God, like, obese and just.
I remember seeing that picture.
Oh my God. It's just, and it's like, I'd rather be celibate for the rest of my life than be involved in a scenario like that, You
got to be pretty desperate. So, and this in a sense harkens back to the idea of a last person on the planet.
Oh, okay.
I just tied that back to that.
Yeah.
Or if you're like the last 4 people on the planet.
Yes.
And you're living in that little commune, so to speak. And in that case, it's a relationship, and the dynamics. I mean, things seem to devolve and get violent.
Yeah.
Or perverted.
Well, look what's happening. I heard in the Chaz Garden.
Okay.
And those of you who don't know what Chaz is,
I'm going to ask you about that.
Yeah, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle.
Yeah.
Where there's a police station which was abandoned by the police in Seattle. This happened within the last week or so. And so there's, I think, a 6-block area where all these activists have taken over and turned it into a zone.
Yeah.
And there's like at least 200 people, and it's sort of like a dystopian Woodstock, like several videos on it. Anyways, and it's run by this guy named Raz, who's a black rapper, and they also call him the Warlord.
Yeah.
And they were building a community garden. Now, none of them know anything about farming, because what they've done is, you can see this on the internet. They put cardboard on the grass, and then they put soil over the cardboard. Yeah. Then they put potted tomato plants on top of on the soil. They don't take the plants out of the container. The container with the plant is on top of the soil.
Yeah.
And they're hoping to start a garden. And they're ordering vegan food from outside to come in. And they have a couple of idiots walking around with firearms. Mm-hmm. They're doing the security. Mm-hmm. They belong to some sort of gun club or something. But I guess Seattle is an open carry city.
Is it? I
heard it was an open carry state. Yeah. So Fox actually has a thing about it, and so does, I think, CNN's got a couple of videos on it. So anyway, so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on it, and what's happening now is there have been several sexual assaults happening, anarchy, people are being bullied and having their stuff stolen. But you can't call the cops, because of course the cops are bad and they're being defunded, and the cops won't go.
No.
So, and then you got a lot of these naive hippie types who are just, thinking it's a great, fun time. But then I'm sure you got a bunch of Machiavellian types who are like looking to start their own fiefdoms or kingdoms, Mm-hmm. And it's just it's so ridiculous, Mm-hmm. Now, whether Antifa is involved, probably is. I don't know for sure, Mm-hmm. And and they have a segregated garden. One part of the garden is for blacks and indigenous people, and the other part is for white people. And I guess, and it's just like, so Antifa, or these people are like preaching anti-racism, but they're and anti-fascism.
Right.
They are implementing fascist techniques and racist techniques,
So it's so ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were watching this on Tim Pool, you were saying.
Tim Pool and Styx Hexenhammer 666.
Yeah, I don't watch Styx and Hammer, but I used to watch Tim Pool a lot more than I do now. He seems to have changed his format. He's gone long. He seems to be wanting to be sort of like Joe Rogan, kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I like his old stuff because his videos were 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I just find there's so much information out there. It's hard for me to have time to really absorb it all. But Tim Pool also, it kind of annoys me now because he won't take a stance. He always claims he's a left-leaning socialist type, and
he's a libertarian.
Well, then he's switched, because he used to always throw that in there. Instead of just making his claim or his position, he would say, well, but I'm this, and it was like he was afraid to stick by his guns and take a stance, which I find a little bit weak when people do that. It's like they're making excuses. Just make your stand and stand by it, whatever that stand may be. But he was always a good reporter, always had really good commentary, and but he switched up his format. I don't know if you noticed that.
I noticed it's a lot longer.
It's like talk show style. It used to be just him.
Yeah, like his videos are usually at least half an hour long.
Yeah.
And some of them, though, I do like. He's got this other guy named Adam on there.
Yeah.
Another guy wears a toque or a beanie, as they say in the U.S.
Yeah, there's that.
And it's almost like Adam is his foil. It's like Adam is actually coming into his own, because there was a bit of a debate between Adam and Tim about the upcoming Civil War that's going to be happening, or what they think. Very interesting. And Adam was actually, I think he won the debate, you know.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he was very articulate and got his points across. And and then they have this young lady also involved in some of the chats. I don't know her name, but she pipes in every so often. It looks like she's running the audio board or something. She's like behind a console of some sort. And every so often she'll put in her 2 cents, but she's pretty smart, you know.
Yeah. Sounds a lot like the format used by talk radio guy going back to the 80s. He's still around. What's his name?
Stern?
Howard Stern, yeah.
Yes.
I've never watched the Howard Stern or listened to one of his episodes ever.
Oh, I have.
But I'm familiar with the format, and I really like the movie he put out. That was a good movie back in 20 years ago. That was a good movie. Interesting. So they're talking about, can I just ask you then, before we get back to Chaz, this debate they had, what was the summary of what they were saying about where this is all going, the next Civil War? What was Tim saying? What was the other?
Tim was more of a nihilist, saying that it's the whole society's falling apart and it's almost hopeless. And the other guy was saying that the people in the U.S. are going to be fed up and they're going to have enough and they're going to put a stop to it. That's the message I got.
I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
Which one do you agree with?
with Adam.
Yeah, you know? The nihilism side, Adam's position, I agree with, but I do think that culturally, society and civilization is potentially eroding, which could
it is,
which could lead to the end of the civilization, which would mean it'll just change into something else down the road.
Yeah,
and that's an interesting topic, by the way.
Yeah,
wish I could remember her name. She's in her 70s. She's a feminist from the 60s.
Camille Paglia.
Thank you.
Yes,
I love listening to her talk. She's so succinct, although she's very sort of hyper and high strung when she talks, but she's intelligent. And she was talking about, she studied history, and she's making the case that there are certain signs that will indicate these are steps towards the end of civilization, a civilization. And some of those signs, if I remember correctly, if you've heard her talk about these and you know some, let me know. But some of the signs that she has talked about were edification of chefs.
Oh.
Does that sound weird or not?
Chefs, as in cooking chefs?
Yeah. And have we not in the last 40 years literally made celebrities out of chefs?
That is true.
So there's that. The other one too is this whole thing to do with the transgender movement.
Yes, yeah.
That's probably her biggest claim. And she's just saying, look, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying this is what's happening historically, and it's led to the demise of that civilization. And these are signs. There's a bunch more of them, but those are the two that come off the top of my head. Now, on the transgender movement, I watched a video last week from a young lady. You know what? I'm going to find it. I forget her name, but it's a really good, it's like a 12-minute video. She's talking about, generally speaking, the whole transgender movement. She's kind of snarky and sarcastic the way she does her editing. It's really it's fun. It's really fun and entertaining. But she shows a map where there's all these new clinics that are opening up in the U.S. And a lot of them are for youth.
Oh, wow.
And it's like kind of shocking. You go, well, whoa, really? Interesting. I'm going to put her I'm gonna send you the video.
Okay.
Because when I find a really cool video like that, I save it. I save all these videos for future reference, and that was one. That was a saver. She had a cool YouTube channel too. I forget what it was, but anyways, yeah, interesting. Camille Paglia has a video somewhere on YouTube where she's making this claim that we are heading down the demise of our civilization for those reasons.
Yeah, that's true. Have you ever watched the video with her and Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I wasn't crazy about it. There was a lot of the same talking points that Jordan's said over and over again. But what of it? What of it?
No, I just I like what she was talking about toxic masculinity. How, let's say, when things start falling apart, when it's Mad Max Road Warrior time,
right?
They're going to be begging to have the toxic masculinity around to protect them.
That's true.
You know,
what was the statement I heard a few weeks ago? There are no feminists in the fire.
yeah. But we did stray off the deviancy, sexual deviancy. I guess maybe it goes by social norms. Like, what if you belong to a society where everybody did a certain act, which at this point in our society would be deemed deviant, but in that society it was totally normal. Now, would that be deviant? You
probably
know,
not, by definition, probably not.
Yeah.
No.
Like, for instance, eating bat soup to me in the Wuhan province or the wet markets, pangolin tails, fried, whatever they eat there.
Yeah.
I know it's away from sexual deviancy, but that's like totally abnormal up here.
It's a good metaphor. No, is that normal there, or is that to them?
It's normal, probably normal to them.
You think so? I don't think so. I would put that in a category of what would be in our North American culture a really weird food, like beef tongue. I would.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Or something like, a lot of people eat it.
Yeah. Or tripe.
What's tripe?
Tripe is the lining of a cow's stomach.
Okay.
And a lot of old school Europeans. It's really cheap. You can get at the grocery store. It's super cheap. Yeah. And I have this. Me and my buddies have a running gag about tripe recipes, and we're thinking we're going to open up a tripe restaurant, and it's supposed to be this really tasteless meat product. It's like lining. It kind of almost looks like a honeycomb membrane kind of. And a lot of Italians and Poles and Ukrainians and old school Europeans, they ate that stuff back in the old country during the war and before the war because it was really cheap. Mm-hmm. You got to boil it, I think, for an hour or two, and then add all sorts of ingredients to it. And they actually have tripe recipes on the internet, Well,
you got to wonder about all these foods, and you got to remember, I think that survival was a big factor.
Yeah.
We just got to eat the whole animal. We have no choice. Everything.
Yeah, so
everything.
The Wuhan bat soup, that's probably, it's not just in Wuhan. I saw a video of Cambodians were stir frying bats in a wok with vegetables, and and they showed, like, from beginning, they showed the poor little bat. They got him stretched out by the wings, and he's like screeching, terrified. Like, I felt sorry for the bat. Mm-hmm. And then they don't show him killing. Oh yeah, they did. They whacked the bat they grabbed the bat, and they whack its head across the ground a couple of times. And then next thing you know, you see these bats being boiled in a pot. Yeah. Then it cuts to a scene where they're in a wok being stir fried.
I wonder why, maybe it tastes good.
Oh, I don't know. That's wrong on all levels. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, then again, that's our culture, right? That's
that's true.
To them, it might be normal. It might be as normal as eating tripe or beef tongue.
Yeah.
Or liver, or I don't think it's the norm there. I would doubt it very much.
Yeah.
I know some people from China. I should ask her. We had an employee that worked for us for 3-4 years. She was actually from Wuhan.
Okay.
And she was our best employee ever. She worked hard, man, and she became very close to us. And next time I see her, I'm going to ask her.
Yeah,
she'd be somebody interested. Remember how we mentioned it'd be cool to do some interviews?
Yeah,
there should be somebody that could even get a 5-10 minute interview from, and these odd, out of the mainstream sort of like takes on society, or things that we might find weird or interesting, including homeless people in the park getting blowjobs.
Oh my God.
The whole backstory to that, right?
That's on another episode. That's,
true story.
True story. It's on video. It wasn't a park though. It was a railway fence.
It was kind of like park-like setting of sorts.
Yeah. Yes.
little patch of grass beside them.
Yeah. And the first time I saw that video, I was actually disturbed.
Yeah.
What disturbed me was the sheer desperation and base humanity that was shown in that video.
Yeah.
Who really, I don't want to say deplorable, but I guess you could call them deplorable individuals. This poor woman who's in her late 30s, early 40s, servicing this old guy. He's like in his 50s.
I think she was doing it for money.
Well, the video starts off where she's taking a swig out of a bottle.
Okay.
And then she puts it down. I don't know if she did that for money or for the bottle or what, but anyways, they're both really hammered because he was hammered. After they were done, she puts her clothes on and she's kind of like propping him up and he's just swaying like ridiculous. And it's just like, oh my God, this is disturbing. It's like humanity at its lowest, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it's funny in a way, but it's like, oh my God, like
it's kind of sad, isn't it?
It was. It's just like base humanity, like,
Yeah. I'm
sorry.
I'm not saying this to sound like I'm high and mighty or I'm virtue signaling, but I've always felt kind of bad for these people, these street people.
Yeah.
They have a rough life.
They do.
And I've often thought, it'd be kind of cool to live on the streets. Your total freedom. What's that line in the song, me and Bobby McGee?
Freedom is
just another word
for having nothing
left to lose. But anyways, freedom in one sense, like the gypsy sense, but on the other hand, man, no, it's a rough life, especially if you're addicted to a substance.
Yeah. And I've seen this woman a lot of times downtown, and I remember one time I was sitting in front of a coffee shop. It had like a patio, and she comes along. It was summertime, and she has a Mickey in her hand, and she just squats down beside our table on the sidewalk and asks for a cup. So somebody gave her an empty coffee cup, and she pours some of the Mickey into the cup, and she's sitting there drinking it. And we just let her sit there.
Yeah.
Didn't talk to her, and she didn't talk to us, but I think she wanted just some company or something. It was just tragic,
You recognized her as that lady.
Yeah, I recognized her.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of tragedy in society,
It's sad. It's like, especially with this coronavirus, I've noticed, because I go downtown a lot, Sudbury. Anyways, it just seemed like the level of, how do you say it? I was going to say undesirables, but that's very judgmental. But
let's call them misfits.
Misfits, yes. Very the fringes of society, let's say.
Yeah.
And they're all like, it's doubled downtown, and they're hanging around in groups and packs. Like, I'm sure a lot of them are drunk. And I think it's like a pack mentality, as in survival. It's like you stick with your own kind, you find your own tribe type of scenario.
Yeah.
Where there's a virus, and like these people, I was upset with the lockdown and the virus and how it's affecting society, but I have food at home and I have a place to live. These people have nothing. So they're kind of in some way taking solace from their own company,
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, I overheard at least 3 conversations of people complaining about having been ripped off by somebody.
Really?
So one woman was like, "Oh, she ripped me off $35, man. That was the last $35 I had. Somebody ripped me off." And I'm thinking, okay, so you've got these people that are like in dire straits. $35 to them is like $350 to me,
Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Salvation Army or the soup kitchens, I don't know what they're doing now, but back then it was like, okay, wait in line and get your sandwiches or whatever. You can't even go in. You got to wait to get your food.
I always wondered where these people went in the middle of winter.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
I always wondered that. And I noticed sometimes you'll find a spot hidden away under a little bit of grass and trees, and you'll see, oh, somebody was sleeping here. And that's what they do. They find a place to sleep and they crash out. But you can't do that in January when it's 35 below zero.
No.
Yeah, but anyways, it'd be interesting to interview some of these folks.
Yeah, like, well, how did you get to where you're at? You know, like
a lot of them are quite chatty. You know,
yeah,
they don't intimidate me when I'm downtown. I'll talk to them. Doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
a lot of them are quite chatty, and there's a lot of interesting stories there.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, like you'd think, well, why don't their families help them?
Yeah.
Well, maybe their families are poor, like, you know, like,
or maybe they don't have a family.
Maybe they don't have a family, or maybe they're disowned. Who knows? Like, maybe something happened where it was the last straw. Get out of the house, don't come back. You know,
interesting. Well, on that note, I was talking to a lady yesterday. She's she's not a street person, but she's had a rough life, man, really rough life. And I was talking to her yesterday. She's 68. She looks 88 years old.
Oh, wow.
No teeth, hard smoker. She said she had lung cancer this winter and they cured it. I'm like, really? So, well, you're still smoking? She goes, yeah, I can't quit. Anyways, we were talking and we got on the topic of marriage and relationships. And she said she was married a couple of times. And I don't know how we got on the topic of, you know, when one spouse beats up the other. What's the term for that?
Domestic violence.
Exactly. And she told me some pretty horrific stories. I'm like, oh, man. Now, this woman here, I've told you about her. I'm not going to say her name or anything, but real tragedy. She's a product of an incestuous relationship. So her father is her grandfather.
Oh, my God.
I'll let you do the math.
Yeah.
She's one of the most upbeat persons I've ever met. She's generally very happy. And I've always wondered about her story. And she was a hooker most of her life. So you think about people like that. I mean, we are so insulated and isolated from the lives and experiences that somebody like that has. It's just, I find that so very fascinating. So next time I see her, I'm just going to, so she told me about 2 events that happened in her life. So next time I see her, I'm going to ask her about whether or not I can get her on videotape her talking about those 2. I'm sure she'll say yes. But I want to get after the backstory, like her whole life story, because it's interesting as hell, I think. Am I bad? Am I wrong for thinking that?
I don't know. My like, what's good and what's bad these days, you know, like as I get older, that changes, you know. Mm-hmm. I used to think that I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, this was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. Well, this was like in the early 80s. I watched this news program. I don't know if it was the Fifth Estate or W5 or it was one of those type of news programs. Mm-hmm. There's this woman who she was a young woman, maybe 21, 22, something like that. She was dating this guy named John Gamble. And John Gamble was a criminal. Real badass.
Right.
And he and her and a few other people robbed a bank in Calgary. They were holed up in a house somewhere, surrounded by the cops. Mm-hmm. I think John Gamble or one of them killed a Calgary cop.
Yeah.
So they're surrounded. Like, there was a shootout, and they killed the cop. So the cops are out for blood, you know. Mm-hmm. And the 2 males ended up killing themselves, and while they're holed up waiting for the cops to take them out.
This sounds like Dog Day Afternoon.
And the woman, I forget her name, but she got charged and convicted of first-degree murder.
Right.
She did 25. She got out and then she died a few years ago. There's a book about her life in the public library. Anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is she talked about her boyfriend John Gamble. He says, "Oh, he's deep down, he's a good person. Blah blah blah. I'm going to stick by him. I'm going to support him. Blah blah blah." This is before the robbery, but you look at this John Gamble. He looks like a complete ne'er-do-well. Yeah. So, anyways, I remember having a conversation with some people saying, "Oh, she's such a good person, supporting this guy." And one of the people I was talking to was a woman saying, "She's a sick woman. She's like totally like sick and codependent, having to kind of like hook up with this guy and
right.
any part to do with him, eh?" So, and I was kind of shocked. What do you mean she's a sick woman? She's got compassion. She loves this guy. And I'm thinking, then later on, I thought, yeah, she's like, what the hell is she doing with this idiot? Like he ruined her life basically. While she had her part too, but
So this woman said that she was sick in her view because she was an enabler, mostly for that reason.
She didn't go into specifics, but sick to be in a situation like that, and to think that she like to be in love with a guy like that and to support him is
that's pretty valid.
Yeah,
I mean, you are who you associate with.
Yes,
and if somebody's in a relationship, somebody's married to the wrong person, and it's pretty obvious to the rest of the world, it's a two-way street. It's not just the guy, the person, the man or woman, the husband or wife who's committing all these atrocious acts, whatever they may be. The other person sticking around, I mean, it's as much on them as it is on the other person, I would imagine. Did
you ever see the movie Pollock?
No. Yeah. Jason Pollock. Yeah.
Okay, so this guy has issues. Like I think he was an alcoholic, drug addict, probably a depressive. So, and Marcia Gay Harden either played his longtime girlfriend or wife, I don't know, but she was his long-term relationship. And I think he cheated on her a lot, and he kept leaving her and coming back. Every time he hit bottom, he kept coming back, and she always took him back in. Like there's a scene where he comes back and he's all like sheepishly, like a dog that's been beaten too much with his tail between his legs, and he comes back and she puts his arms around her. There, you're back. It's like, oh my God, what the hell is she doing with this guy? Like what's wrong with her? Yeah. So anyway, values what's good and bad. Like, is it good to always give money to people that are homeless and asking you for money? I usually, about every third person who asks me, or every third occurrence, I usually give them something. I feel bad for them, and I think, what the hell, if I can afford it, I'll give it to them. I'm not going to be, they're going to use it for drugs, maybe, but probably not. I don't think they're all drug addicts. I think some of them are desperately down and out, and
yeah, well, they're probably abusing something for the most part.
Maybe,
Yeah, it's kind of tragic. So it's the tragic side of society. So let's close up soon. I want to mention two movies I watched.
Okay.
Last night I watched Smashed.
Okay.
It came out in 2012. It was an amazing movie. You were asking me, the lady who is the actor, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is that the name? Okay, yeah. She played in Aaron Paul, who's also in Breaking Bad. Oh, by the way, little side trivia. Do you remember when Breaking Bad started? What year it started?
No, I don't.
Can you guess? Have you seen it?
I've only seen one episode.
Okay. So you didn't get caught up. That was the only real Netflix series that I was obsessed with, and I was disappointed at the end. But anyways.
No, I never got into that.
It was all the rage.
I heard,
I thought it was much later than what it was. It started, the first season was in 2008. Like,
okay,
whoa, that's a lot older than I thought. So this movie came out in 12, which was towards the last part of Breaking Bad. And I guess Aaron Paul took a little side break and did this movie. It's a really good movie. And I highly recommend it to anybody. It's sort of, there's like, you can almost see where a homeless person or somebody who goes down the wrong road, even if they're in a pretty comfortable situation with a home and a job and whatnot, where they can make just decisions that would not let them further and progress and potentially go into a whole new way of life. and for this lady here, particularly a life of sobriety. So I don't want to talk anymore about this movie, but it's a really good movie, and no more spoiler alerts.
Okay.
The other movie I watched, this one blew me away, The Platform. It's on Netflix. It got pretty good ratings, pretty good reviews.
Okay.
Well, you want to see a dystopian movie with a lot of metaphor and symbolism and story and gore and the whole thing to do with the dominance hierarchy and survival. But I want you to watch it, and I'd like to talk about it someday, because there's a whole lot of stuff in there that I think it's going to really intrigue you. Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? All these characters, I believe, all have much, much deeper meanings, as well as the different floors that they're on. But you have to see the movie to know what I'm talking about. It's really bizarre, but really well done. So it's called The Platform.
Yeah, that sounds really good. That's something I gotta get Netflix one of these days.
Well, you might be able to find it as a one-off rental somewhere. I'm not sure. Yeah, and I was talking about that lady who did the transgender clinic video.
Yeah.
It's 15 minutes and 34 seconds long. Her name is Sydney Watson.
Okay.
She has 385,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Wow.
So she's got a video came out May 31st called "How the Medical Industry is Profiting Off Transgender People. It's a Money-Making Racket." And I emailed you the link to that.
Okay.
So go check it out, and you'll see how that's such a big component. And you could talk about that till the cows come home, about what really drives these movements. Is it mostly profit? In large part, I think it is. It baffles me, though, that all these professionals would be behind this just for the sheer idea of making a profit based on something that is so controversial.
Yeah, that's true. It's sad. It's like, I don't know what to say. That's a whole episode in itself.
Let's talk about it in another day.
But before we go, those of you out there in YouTube land, you have to watch Midsummer, the movie, spelled Midsommar.
Midsommar. I haven't seen.
Sort of like The Wicker Man, in a way, but it's really good.
I'm gonna go. I'm on Rotten Tomatoes, and Midsommar got 83% tomato score,
right?
And audience score 63. That's really? Very similar to The Platform, by the way. And when I see a high critic score and a low audience score, in my brain, I immediately put it into an art movie. Which has a lot more depth than audience, or they're possibly not getting it. So it's not a movie for the masses. So I haven't watched it yet, but it's going to have to go on my watch list. Okay. Are we done?
I think we're done.